The night was cold and the narrow streets of the old city were almost empty. Ethan walked slowly with a small bag in his hand, his boots splashing in the shallow puddles. He was tired from work, but this was something he did every evening. He carried leftover bread and scraps of meat from the diner where he worked. It was not for himself. It was for the stray dogs that waited for him in the dark alleys. The dogs knew his smell. They wagged their tails when he appeared. One by one they came running, their thin bodies moving quickly through the shadows. Ethan smiled a little as he broke the bread and threw pieces on the ground. He whispered softly as if talking to children. "There you go, boys. Eat up, don't fight," the animals barked, growled and licked his hands. For Ethan, this small act of kindness gave him peace. It reminded him that even if the world was cruel, he could still choose to be gentle. But tonight something was different. As he bent down to place a scrap of meat near an old wooden crate, he heard a sound that froze his blood. It was not a bark, not a meow, not even a human voice. It was a faint whimper, soft, trembling, almost like a child's cry. Ethan stopped moving, his eyes scanning the shadows. The dogs stopped too, their ears twitching, their tails stiff. They sensed it as well. He turned slowly, his heart beating faster. Behind the broken crates and rusted pipes, two small figures crouched together. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the streetlight like liquid silver. Their faces were thin, their hair tangled, and their clothes were torn rags. They were not dogs, not cats, not human children. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. They were alien. One of them shivered and pulled the other close. The smaller one had bones sticking out from her shoulders, her skin pale and strange. The older one stared at Ethan, her lips trembling. She whispered something in a language that was soft and melodic. To Ethan's shock, he felt he could almost understand it. It was like hearing a dream he had forgotten long ago. The words were simple. "Please." "Food." Ethan blinked, his mind racing. He had heard rumors about strange things in the city, stories of secret labs, of creatures not from Earth, but he had never believed them. Yet here they were, right in front of him, starving, scared, and so small. His first thought was fear. What if soldiers were hunting them? What if he got caught? But his second thought was stronger, compassion. He looked at the piece of bread still in his hand. Slowly, he held it out. The older girl's eyes widened, her body tense, but the younger one crawled forward. Trembling, her tiny hands snatched the bread, and she stuffed it into her mouth desperately. The crumbs fell, but she didn't care. She ate as if she had not eaten in days. The older girl hissed softly. Pulling her sister back, she kept staring at Ethan, unsure if he was a friend or an enemy. Ethan lowered himself to one knee. His voice was quiet. "Come, it's okay, I won't hurt you. Take it." He pushed another piece of bread toward them. The older girl hesitated, then slowly reached out. Her fingers touched his hand for a second, and Ethan shivered. Her skin was cold, too cold, almost like touching metal. She grabbed the bread and gave it to her sister. Her lips moved again, whispering something he couldn't understand fully, but one word repeated again and again. "Safe. Safe, safe." Ethan's eyes softened. They were children. No matter where they came from, children running from something, children starving in the night. He looked around quickly. The street was empty for now, but his gut told him this was dangerous. He could not just leave them here, but he also could not just take them openly. The dogs barked suddenly, their ears pointing toward the far end of the alley. Ethan froze. A faint humming sound echoed through the night. Not the sound of cars, not the sound of people. It was sharper, mechanical, like scanning drones moving through the air. The alien girls gasped and pulled each other close, their glowing eyes filled with terror. Ethan realized then that someone was searching for them, and if he stood there too long, he would be caught too. The older girl's lips trembled. She looked at him with desperate eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered in broken English this time. "Please, hide us." Ethan felt a cold chill run through his spine. He glanced at the approaching red lights bouncing on the walls. The soldiers or drones were getting closer. This was no longer just a night of feeding stray dogs. This was something much bigger. Something dangerous, but Ethan knew his choice. He reached out his hand toward them, his voice firm but gentle. "Come with me." Quickly. The older girl hesitated only for a second before grabbing her sister. They moved toward Ethan, their thin feet silent on the wet ground. The dogs growled low, sensing the danger in the air. Ethan's heart pounded as he led them toward the old shed at the end of the alley. He didn't know who was chasing them or why, but he knew one thing tonight. His small act of kindness had pulled him into a secret he could never walk away from, and the sound of the humming drones was getting closer. Every second counted now. The shed door creaked as Ethan pushed it open, the hinges crying from years of rust. The place smelled of oil, dust, and old wood, but it was better than being out in the open. He waved the girls inside quickly, glancing over his shoulder. The red glow from the patrol drones flickered on the far walls of the alley. Closer with every second, he shut the door softly, his breath heavy in his chest. Inside, the two alien girls clung together in the dim light. Their small bodies shivered, their eyes reflecting fear and exhaustion. Ethan leaned against the door, trying to calm himself. He had no idea why he was doing this. He only knew that if those soldiers, or whatever they were, found the girls, they wouldn't live through the night. He crouched down to their level, his voice gentle. "You're safe here. For now." The older girl tilted her head, her silver eyes blinking. She understood some of his words, but not all. The younger one held the bread tightly, nibbling on it as if afraid someone would take it away. Ethan pulled more scraps of food from his bag, setting them on the floor, a half-eaten sandwich, some fried potatoes, a bit of dried meat. The smell filled the shed, and the younger girl's hunger exploded. She crawled forward, grabbing pieces with shaking hands, stuffing them quickly into her mouth. Her small throat worked hard to swallow, crumbs sticking to her lips. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he watched. She was starving. No, both of them were. The older one moved slower, cautious. She kept looking at Ethan as if measuring him. Her thin fingers reached for a fried potato, lifting it carefully before biting down. Her lips trembled as the taste hit her tongue. It had been too long since she had eaten something real. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw relief on her face. Minutes passed in silence except for the sound of chewing. The younger girl leaned against her sister. Her tiny body trembling less now, Ethan finally whispered, almost to himself, "What happened to you? Where did you come from?" The older girl paused, her silver eyes meeting his. She struggled with the words, her English broken but clear enough. "Ship crashed long ago. We hide humans. Find, take us. Cage tests. Pain." Her voice cracked, her body shaking as memories returned. She pulled her sister closer. Burying her face in her tangled hair, Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had heard rumors of government labs hidden under the city, places where strange beings were studied in secret. But to see the victims, two innocent children, he felt both anger and sorrow. He whispered, "You escaped?" The girl nodded weakly. Her eyes darted to the walls as if the soldiers could hear her even now. She added softly, "They hunt, always hunt," the younger one whimpered, her small voice breaking the air. "No, go back," she whispered, her English even rougher than her sister's. Her little hands clung to Ethan's jacket. As if begging him to promise safety, Ethan's heart broke. He placed his hand over hers, firm and steady. "You won't go back," he said quietly. His own words surprised him. He had no plan, no idea what he was doing, but he meant it. He would not let them be taken. Suddenly, the humming outside grew louder. A sharp beam of red light swept past the cracks of the shed door. The girls froze, their breaths sharp and quick. Ethan pressed a finger to his lips. "Shh," he whispered, barely breathing himself. The sound of boots echoed in the alley. Low voices spoke in clipped tones. "Scan every corner, they're close." "The signal is strong." Ethan's blood ran cold. The soldiers were right outside. He crouched low, pulling the girls behind a stack of old crates. The younger one's eyes filled with tears again. Her small body shook, but the older one wrapped her arms around her. Ethan held his breath as shadows passed across the cracks in the wood. A sharp metallic click rang out, the sound of a scanner sweeping the area. A red laser beam cut through the tiny holes of the shed walls. It passed over Ethan's boot for one terrifying moment. He thought it would stop, but then it moved on. The voices fading slowly, boots marched away. The drones hummed down the alley. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The girls collapsed into each other, whispering in their own language. Their fear still heavy in the air, Ethan sat down on the floor, running his hands through his hair. He was in deep trouble now. If the soldiers came back and found them, It wouldn't matter that he had done nothing wrong. He would be branded as a traitor, a criminal, maybe worse. But when he looked at the two alien girls huddled together, he knew he couldn't hand them over. The older girl looked at him again. Her lips moved slowly, carefully. "You help?" she asked. Her eyes held both hope and fear. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice steady. "Yes," he said. "I'll help." Outside, the night was far from silent. The drones were circling back, soldiers spreading their search wider. Time was running out. Ethan knew he had to move them soon. The shed wouldn't stay safe for long, but where could he take them? His apartment was small, barely enough for himself. And if anyone saw him carrying alien children, he'd be finished. Still, there was no choice. He would figure it out as he went, because leaving them here was not an option. The younger girl's small voice broke the silence. She whispered a single word, her accent strange but clear enough. "Safe." Ethan's chest tightened again. Safe. That was what they wanted. That was what they had never known, and somehow, it was now his job to give it to them. He glanced once more at the thin cracks of red light moving outside. He tightened his grip on the bag. "Stay close," he whispered. "We're leaving." Now, the girls clung to him, their glowing eyes reflecting trust for the first time. Ethan stood, opened the shed door carefully, and stepped back into the dangerous night, not knowing that this small act of kindness had just tied his fate to theirs, and the hunt had only begun. The night air was sharp as Ethan guided the two alien girls out of the shed. The city seemed darker than usual, every corner alive with shadows. The hum of drones drifted above the rooftops, red lights scanning like hungry eyes. He kept his head low, one arm around the younger girl to keep her steady. The older one walked close to his side, glancing around nervously, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They slipped through narrow alleys, their feet splashing in puddles. Every sound felt louder than it should. The creak of a rusty sign, the bark of a dog, even Ethan's breathing. He muttered under his breath, "Stay quiet. Don't stop." The girls nodded, their small faces pale with fear. Ethan led them toward the old industrial district. It was filled with broken warehouses and forgotten supply sheds. Few people came here anymore, and that made it safer. At least for now. But then the sharp whir of a scanner broke the silence. A red beam swept across the alley just behind them. Ethan's heart jumped. "Run!" he whispered harshly, pulling the girls forward. They dashed across the cracked pavement. The younger girl stumbled, but Ethan caught her quickly. Behind them, the drone screeched, its mechanical voice ringing out. "Unauthorized life forms detected. Alert! Alert!" The night exploded with noise. More drones whirred to life above. Red lights crossing like nets in the sky. From the far end of the street, boots pounded against the ground. Soldiers in black armor appeared, their visors glowing blue. Weapons drawn, Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't fight them, not with children at his side. There was only one choice: hide, trick, survive. He dragged the girls into a side alley. The older one whispered something in her language, her voice trembling. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. They're coming. He glanced around. The alley ended in a dead wall. Trash bins and crates piled high, trapped. The drones drew closer, beams of light cutting across the walls. The younger girl whimpered, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Ethan's chest pounded as he searched desperately for an escape. Then he saw it, an old drain cover half broken in the ground. He dropped to his knees, yanking at the rusted metal. It groaned loudly but finally shifted. Beneath it was a narrow tunnel, dark and foul-smelling. But it was better than being caught. "Go!" Ethan whispered fiercely. He pushed the younger girl down first. Then the older one. Both crawled inside, their small bodies squeezing through. Ethan followed last, dragging the cover back just as a red beam passed over the alley. He lay in the dark tunnel, his heart racing above. Soldiers shouted, boots stomping. One of them cursed. "We had the signal, it was here." Another replied, "Search every corner. They can't be far." Ethan stayed silent, his arms around the girls. The tunnel smelled of mold and sewage, water dripping slowly down the walls. The younger girl pressed her face into his chest. Trembling, the older one clutched his sleeve tightly, her breath shallow. They waited, every second stretching like hours. Finally, the soldiers moved on, their voices fading. Only the distant hum of drones remained above. Ethan let out a slow breath, his chest heavy. They had escaped for now, he whispered. "We need to move." The tunnel stretched into the darkness. a forgotten artery of the old city. He didn't know where it led, but anywhere was safer than the streets above. The girls crawled beside him, their glowing eyes lighting the way faintly. It was eerie, but strangely comforting too. Ethan realized that without them, he would be blind in this darkness. Their weakness was also their strength. After a long crawl, the tunnel opened into a wider underground chamber, pipes dripped steadily, the walls covered in moss. Ethan sat for a moment, catching his breath. The girls curled close together, exhaustion heavy on their faces. He reached into his bag, pulling out the last of the food, a small piece of bread and some dried meat. He split it between them, ignoring his own hunger. The younger girl chewed slowly, now calmer. Her tiny voice whispered a word that startled Ethan. "Thank you." He froze, staring at her. Her accent was heavy, her voice soft, but the meaning was clear. The older sister nodded faintly, her lips trembling as she repeated the same words. "Thank you, human." Ethan's throat tightened. They were strangers, aliens, yet their gratitude felt so real, so pure. He forced a small smile, whispering back, "You don't need to thank me, you deserve better." But even as he said it, the truth pressed heavily in his mind. They were still being hunted, and the soldiers would not stop until they were caught. He had put himself in danger just by helping them, and yet, when he looked at their fragile forms huddled against him, he knew he would not turn back. The older girl's voice cut through the silence again, broken but clear. "They never stop," she whispered, "always hunt. Until we gone." Ethan clenched his fists. His jaw tightened as anger burned inside him. He thought of the soldiers outside, of the cruel hands that had locked these children in cages, and he made a silent promise as long as he was alive. He would not let them be taken again above. Faint echoes returned, the hum of drones sweeping back. The hunt was not over. The net was closing tighter, and the tunnel that gave them safety might soon become a trap. Ethan stood, offering his hand to the girls. "We keep moving," he said firmly. They took his hands without hesitation. Their trust in him was fragile, but real. Together, they stepped deeper into the darkness, unaware that what awaited them in the forgotten underworld of the city was even more dangerous than the hunters above. The tunnel stretched on for what felt like hours. Ethan's hands and knees ached from crawling, but he didn't stop. The two alien girls clung close to him, their glowing eyes dim with exhaustion. Above, the muffled hum of drones faded slowly, replaced by the dripping of water and the echo of rats. The city's forgotten veins swallowed them, hiding them from the hunters. Finally, the tunnel opened into a broken maintenance chamber. Rust-covered pipes lined the walls, leaking streams of foul water into a shallow pool. Old crates and broken tools were scattered on the floor. It wasn't much, but it was safer than the streets above. Ethan sat against the wall, catching his breath. The younger girl curled up instantly, her thin body trembling less now as sleep began to pull her down. The older one stayed awake, silver eyes watching him carefully. Her hands wrapped tightly around her sister, as if she feared someone would rip her away. Ethan whispered, "You can rest here for a while." She tilted her head, trying to understand. After a moment, she nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. Her eyes softened just a little, a sign that trust was slowly forming. As silence filled the chamber, Ethan's mind raced. What had he done? He had taken in two aliens, children no less, while soldiers hunted them like animals. He had no money, no weapons, and no safe plan, but he couldn't walk away now. Every time he looked at their fragile forms, he knew this was no longer just their fight. It was his too. The younger girl stirred, letting out a soft cough. Her breathing sounded rough, uneven. Ethan frowned. Moving closer, her skin was pale, almost translucent, and faint cracks of glowing veins spread across her arms. He touched her forehead carefully. She burned with fever. The older girl gasped when she saw him lean close. Her hands rose protectively, her voice sharp in her broken English. "No. Hurt, sister." Ethan raised both palms quickly. "I won't hurt her. She's sick." His voice was firm but calm. The older girl froze, her eyes wide. Then slowly she lowered her hands. Her lips trembled, whispering, "Help, please." Ethan swallowed hard. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't know what medicine her kind needed. But leaving her like this meant she would not survive long. His mind flashed to one name, Dr. Keller. An old friend who once worked in the city hospital before he exposed government corruption. Now Keller lived in hiding, practicing medicine quietly for those who couldn't trust the system. If anyone could help the girl, it was him. But finding Keller meant risk. Soldiers were searching everywhere, and Keller's name was on every watch list. Still, Ethan knew he had no choice. The older girl watched him silently. As if reading his thoughts, she whispered, "She die?" Her voice broke on the last word, tears glimmering in her strange eyes. Ethan shook his head, his voice steady, even though his heart felt heavy. "Not if I can help it, I'll get her safe." The girl blinked, and for the first time she gave him a faint nod of trust. Her small hand rested on his arm, light as a feather. "Human. Good," she whispered. The words hit him harder than he expected. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed down the tunnel. The sound of metal striking metal. Ethan froze, pulling the girls closer to him. Had the soldiers followed them here? He held his breath, straining his ears. Voices drifted faintly through the pipes. "Signal shows this way," one soldier muttered. "They can't hide underground forever," another replied. Ethan's stomach dropped. They were already searching the tunnels. Time was running out. He pulled the older girl's hand, whispering urgently, "We have to move again." She shook her head, pointing at her sick sister. Weak." Ethan clenched his fists. It didn't matter. Staying meant death for all of them. He scanned the chamber quickly. There was a rusted ladder leading upward to a cracked hatch. Maybe it opened to the old industrial block above. He hurried to it, pushing the hatch with his shoulder. With a loud groan, it gave way. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the faint smell of smoke and machinery. Ethan returned and lifted the younger girl into his arms. Her small head rested weakly against his chest, her glowing veins faint but pulsing. The older girl climbed after him, her movements quick but silent. Together, they emerged into the ruins of an abandoned warehouse. The roof had collapsed in parts, moonlight spilling across the dusty floor. Ethan placed the younger girl on a pile of old cloth. The older one knelt beside her, whispering softly in her strange language. The girl stirred faintly, her small hands clinging to her sister's arm. Ethan watched them for a moment before standing. He knew what had to be done. "I'll get her help," he whispered. The older girl's eyes widened, fear flickering in them. "No, soldiers," she warned. Ethan nodded. "I know, but I have someone who can help her, I promise." The girl studied him. Finally, she gave a small nod. Her trust was fragile, but she had no other choice. Outside, the faint hum of drones echoed in the sky. Searchlights swept across broken windows. The soldiers were tightening their net, and Ethan knew if he failed now, they would all be caught. He looked at the sick child again, her breathing shallow, her glowing veins flickering like fading stars. He clenched his jaw, whispering to himself, "Hold on, kid. Just hold on." And with that promise, Ethan prepared to risk everything to find the only man who could save her life. The warehouse was cold and silent. Moonlight spilled through cracks in the broken roof, shining faintly on the two alien girls. The younger one lay weak on a pile of old cloth, her glowing veins flickering like dying embers. The older sister sat close beside her, eyes sharp, watching every shadow. Ethan stood near the shattered window, his fists clenched. He knew he could not wait any longer. If she didn't get help soon, the younger girl wouldn't survive the night. And the only person Ethan could trust was Dr. Keller, a man who had once healed the poor for free, until he exposed what the government was hiding. They branded him a traitor, shut down his clinic. But Ethan knew Keller still worked in secret, moving from place to place, helping those who had nowhere else to go. Finding him would be dangerous. Soldiers were everywhere, drones sweeping the skies, scanners searching for traces of alien energy. But there was no other choice. Ethan turned back to the older girl, his voice quiet but firm. "I need to leave. Find someone who can help your sister." Her silver eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. She shook her head quickly, clutching Ethan's sleeve. "No, you leave. Soldiers take us." Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear. She didn't want to be left alone. Ethan crouched down, looking her straight in the eyes. "I'll come back," he said. "You have my word. I won't leave you." He placed his hand on hers, steady and warm. The older girl trembled, then slowly nodded. Her lips whispered one fragile word. "Promise?" "Yes," Ethan said firmly. "I promise." He found an old tarp and covered the broken windows. Then he pulled a rusted metal bar across the door. making sure no one could enter easily. The older girl watched every move, her small body tense but silent. When Ethan finally stood, she nodded once. It was the only sign of trust she could give. Slipping into the night, Ethan pulled his hood low. The streets were quiet, but he could feel the watchful eyes above. Every corner had shadows. Every rooftop whispered danger. He moved quickly, sticking to back alleys and forgotten roads. He remembered the last time he had spoken to Keller. The doctor had told him, "If you ever need me, follow the old railway line. You'll find me where the lights don't reach." It was a strange clue, but Ethan held on to it now. He made his way toward the abandoned district where the old railway tunnels cut through the city. Halfway there, a sudden buzz filled the air. Ethan froze. His back pressed against a wall. A patrol drone hovered above. Its red beam sweeping the street, he held his breath, his hand gripping a broken pipe he had found on the ground. The drone's lens flickered, scanning the air for one long second. It hovered right above him, then it moved on. Its hum fading into the night, Ethan exhaled slowly, sweat running down his neck. He pushed forward, heart pounding harder with every step. At last he reached the railway yard. The tracks were rusted, weeds growing wild between them. Broken carriages stood like skeletons under the moonlight. Ethan followed the rails down into a dark tunnel. The deeper he went, the colder it became. A faint light flickered ahead, not the harsh red of drones, but a soft, warm glow. Ethan slowed his steps, his voice low. "Keller?" "It's Ethan." For a moment, only silence answered him. Then a figure stepped from the shadows. Holding a lantern, an old man, his face lined with years of struggle, his eyes sharp and tired. "Dr. Keller?" "Ethan," the doctor said quietly. "What trouble have you brought me this time?" Ethan let out a shaky breath of relief. "I need your help, Keller. It's not for me." Keller studied him, his gaze narrowing. "Then who?" Ethan hesitated, his throat dry. Finally, he whispered, "2 children not from here, they're being hunted. And one of them is dying." The doctor stiffened, his lantern flickering as his hand trembled slightly. "Aliens?" he asked, his voice low. Ethan nodded. "Yes, please, Keller. She won't last till morning. I can't let them take her back to those cages." The silence stretched. Keller rubbed his tired face, muttering, "You know what you're asking. If the soldiers find me with them, it's the end." For both of us, Ethan stepped forward, his voice urgent. "They're just children, Keller. They've suffered enough. If anyone can save her, it's you. Please." The old doctor studied him for a long moment. Finally, he sighed, shaking his head with a grim smile. "You always had a way of finding trouble. Ethan." He set the lantern down and picked up a worn leather bag filled with old medical tools. "Show me the way," he said. Ethan's chest loosened, relief flooding through him, but deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning, because once Keller saw the girl, once he touched those glowing veins, there would be no going back. The hunt outside was growing stronger. The soldiers were tightening their net across the city. And now Ethan had pulled another soul into the storm. As they walked back through the tunnels, Ethan whispered to himself, "Hold on, kid. Help is coming," and somewhere far above, the hum of drones rose again. The night was far from over. The real fight was only just beginning. The warehouse was silent when Ethan returned with Dr. Keller. The moonlight had faded, replaced by the faint glow of the city's searchlights sweeping across the sky. Inside, the older alien girl sat awake, clutching her sister tightly. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. Narrowing as Ethan stepped in with another man, she rose quickly, her thin body tense, her hand raised as if ready to shield her sister. Ethan lifted his hands calmly. "It's okay," he whispered. "He's a friend. He's here to help." Dr. Keller froze as his lantern light fell across the younger girl. The doctor's sharp eyes widened, his lips parting in disbelief. Her small chest rose and fell unevenly, glowing veins tracing across her skin like cracks of light beneath the surface. "My God," Keller breathed. "They're real," the older girl hissed softly at him. Pulling her sister back, Ethan quickly knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "It's okay, he won't hurt you. He's here to make her better." The doctor knelt too, moving slowly. He placed his medical bag on the ground and pulled out a stethoscope and small scanner. The younger girl stirred weakly, whimpering as Keller touched her wrist. Her skin was ice cold and her pulse flickered faintly. Keller muttered, "Fever, respiratory strain, malnutrition, and something else. Something I don't even recognize." He turned to Ethan, his face pale. She's dying. If we don't stabilize her soon, she won't last the night. Ethan's chest tightened. What do you need? He asked quickly. Keller hesitated, his eyes darting to his bag. I need power for my tools, proper light, and supplies I can't carry around. We'll have to move her. My safe house is in the East Quarter. Ethan's jaw tightened. The East Quarter was across the city, and the soldiers were everywhere, but they had no choice. He nodded. We'll get her there. The older girl looked between them, her silver eyes wide. She didn't understand all the words, but she caught enough. Her trembling voice whispered, Move, danger, almost as if her warning summoned it. The sound of engines roared outside. Ethan ran to the window. Peering through a crack in the tarp, a black armored transport had stopped on the street. Soldiers spilling out with rifles raised. Red drones swarmed overhead, their beams sweeping across the ruins. They've tracked her signal again, Keller muttered, grabbing his bag. They'll find this place in minutes. Ethan turned sharply, his voice low but fierce. Then we move now, Keller. Help me lift her. The younger girl groaned softly as Ethan picked her up. Her head fell against his shoulder, glowing faintly against his chest. The older girl followed close, her small hands gripping Ethan's sleeve tightly. Dr. Keller carried his bag, his face grim. They slipped out the back of the warehouse. Just as soldiers burst through the front, shouts rang out. Boots smashing against the wooden floor. Spread out. The signal's strong, don't let them escape. Ethan's heart pounded. He ran through the maze of alleys, every step heavy with the weight of the child in his arms. The older girl stayed close, her glowing eyes watching the shadows behind them. Keller guided them quickly, his voice sharp. This way. Through the old tram line. The night became a blur of running, hiding, and near captures. At one corner, a drone swooped low, its beam slicing across Ethan's back. He ducked into a stairwell just in time. Holding the younger girl tight, the drone screeched above. Alarms echoing across the city, they're closing in. Ethan hissed. Keller nodded grimly. Underground, we'll lose them in the tunnels. They reached a broken tram entrance. The gates rusted and half collapsed. Ethan slipped through with the girls, Keller right behind. The underground smelled of dust and mold, but it was dark, perfect for hiding. But the soldiers were relentless, their boots echoed above. Then down the stairwell after them, floodlights blazed across the walls, chasing shadows deeper into the tunnels. The younger girl whimpered weakly, her glowing veins flickering brighter as her fever worsened. The older one whispered in her language, trying to comfort her, but her eyes darted around with terror. Ethan pushed forward, his voice harsh with urgency. Keep moving. We can't stop now. They raced deeper until they reached a split in the tunnels. Keller pointed left. East Quarters this way. But the sound of soldiers was louder on that side. Ethan shook his head. They'll expect us to go left. We go right. Keller hesitated. Right leads to the river tunnels, they're half collapsed. Ethan's jaw tightened. Better than walking straight into them, we'll find another way across. They darted right, their footsteps splashing in shallow water. The walls narrowed, forcing them to move in single file. Behind them, the sound of shouts and gunfire echoed. The soldiers had entered the tunnels. The chase was no longer just outside, it was here, surrounding them. Ethan's breath came hard, but he didn't stop. He tightened his grip on the weak child in his arms, whispering softly, Hold on, kid. Just hold on. The older girl stumbled, nearly falling, but Ethan caught her wrist and pulled her along. Her silver eyes glowed brighter in the dark, filled with fear but also determination. She refused to let go of him, even as her tiny feet scraped against the wet floor at last. They burst into a larger chamber where broken pipes jutted from the ceiling. Water gushed down into a pool, filling the air with mist. Ethan set the girl down on a dry stone. His chest heaving, Keller crouched immediately, opening his bag and pulling out strange tools. I'll do what I can here, but we don't have long before they find us. The older girl dropped beside her sister. Holding her hand tightly, her trembling lips whispered, Safe, please. Ethan knelt too, his eyes flicking to the tunnel where faint beams of red light were already approaching. His voice was low, steady. You're safe, but we have to fight for it. The chamber shook with the distant rumble of boots and drones. The hunters were almost upon them, and Ethan knew the next few minutes would decide everything. The underground chamber trembled with noise. Boots pounded in the tunnels, voices shouted orders, and the metallic buzz of drones filled the air. The red glow of scanners flickered through the mist, getting closer every second. Ethan tightened his grip on the broken pipe he had picked up earlier. His heart thundered, but his eyes stayed fixed on the two alien girls. The younger one lay weak on the stone, her glowing veins pulsing faintly like fading stars. Dr. Keller knelt beside her, attaching strange wires to his small scanner. "Her body is shutting down," Keller muttered. "If I don't stabilize her now, she won't survive." His voice trembled, but his hands moved quickly, steady as a surgeon. The older sister held her sibling's hand tightly. Her silver eyes darted toward the tunnel entrance. "Fear shining in them," she whispered to Ethan, her voice broken but clear enough. "They come. Always come, no stop, never stop." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we stop them," he said firmly. He moved to the tunnel opening, placing himself between the soldiers and the girls. His shadow stretched long in the mist. He knew he couldn't win against rifles and armor, but he also knew he couldn't let them through. Moments later, the first soldier burst into the chamber. Rifle raised, his visor glowed blue, reflecting Ethan's figure. "Step aside." "Citizen," the soldier barked. "Those creatures belong to us. This is government property." Ethan's chest burned with anger. "They're not property," he shouted. "They're children." The soldier's grip on his rifle tightened. "Last warning," he said coldly. "Move, or we take you down with them." Behind Ethan, the younger girl whimpered weakly. Her sister cried out, clutching her hand tighter. That sound hit Ethan harder than any weapon could. He planted his feet, lifting the pipe like a blade. "Then you'll have to go through me," he growled. The chamber exploded with chaos. More soldiers stormed in. Their weapons glowing, drones circled above. Their red beams locking onto Ethan, Keller shouted desperately, "Ethan, don't be a fool. They'll kill you." But Ethan didn't move. He stood tall, his body trembling but his eyes unyielding. He thought of the first night he fed stray dogs, of choosing kindness when no one else would, and he knew this was no different. He was not just protecting aliens, he was protecting innocence. The lead soldier stepped forward, rifle aimed at Ethan's chest. His finger squeezed the trigger, and then it happened. A blinding flash of silver light burst across the chamber. The soldiers staggered back, covering their visors. The drones sparked and crashed into the water. Ethan turned sharply. The older girl stood at the center of the light, her silver eyes blazing brighter than fire, her small body trembling, but her arms spread wide as if shielding everyone behind her. Energy poured from her glowing veins, forming a shimmering barrier of light. The soldiers fired, but their bullets dissolved against the shield. Sparking like ash, Keller gasped, nearly dropping his tools. Impossible. Her body's generating a defense field. Ethan stared in shock. The fragile girl who had barely trusted him hours ago now stood like a warrior of light. The older sister cried out in her language, her voice strong for the first time. Her words echoed like thunder in the chamber. Ethan couldn't understand them, but he felt their meaning. No more cages. No more chains. The soldiers tried again, their rifles blazing, but the barrier held, pulsing brighter with every shot. The chamber shook as if the very air itself obeyed her will. The younger girl stirred weakly, her glowing veins answering the light of her sister. Together, their energy surged, filling the room with warmth instead of fear. Ethan felt it in his chest, a strange calm, a strange hope. These girls weren't just survivors. They were something greater, something humanity had no right to cage. The soldiers began to retreat, shouting into their comms, "Control is impossible. Fall back." Their armored transport engines roared above the tunnels, calling them away. The barrier blazed one final time before fading. The older girl collapsed to her knees, her body shaking with exhaustion. Ethan rushed to her, catching her before she fell. Her silver eyes flickered open, weak but still burning with fire. She whispered faintly, "Safe now?" Ethan nodded, his voice breaking but steady. "Yes, you're safe." Behind them, Keller finished stabilizing the younger girl. Her breathing steadied, her glow softened. "She'll live," Keller said softly. "But we can't stay here. Soon they'll send more. We need to get them far away from this city." Ethan looked at the two fragile figures in his arms. He knew life would never be the same again, but he also knew he had made his choice. He had chosen kindness, even when it meant risking everything. As the mist cleared and the last hum of drones faded into the night, Ethan whispered softly to the sisters, "You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm still breathing." The girls leaned against him, their glowing eyes reflecting trust. For the first time in their short, painful lives, they believed him, and deep in the tunnels, where no soldier dared follow now, the future of their bond had just begun.